Hi, I'm Michelle the Irritable Vegan. I'm here to share my vegan low FODMAP story and hopefully take some of the BS out of IBS. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. I'm going to take you on a little quick kitchen tour just to show you what low FODMAP staples I like to make sure that I've got on hand. Now don't get me wrong, this is not a weekly food haul. Most of the things that I'm going to show you are going to last several weeks, even several months before they need to be replenished. It's just the type of things that I like to keep on hand, and when I do know that I've got all these things available to me, I can pretty much guarantee that on any given day I'm going to be able to make a tasty vegan low FODMAP meal for myself and for the rest of the family using everything I've got here. We tend to do a weekly shop where we stock up on the items that we use regularly and fresh fruit and vegetables. So those things combined with everything I'm going to show you today are pretty much the staple of what I eat as a vegan low FODMAPper. Let's take a closer look. So let's start with grains and starches. So the number one thing is gluten-free pasta. I absolutely love pasta, so I always make sure that I've got some gluten-free pasta on hand. This is the Sainsbury's one and I do particularly like this. It isn't necessarily any more expensive than a regular pasta. I definitely think it's got a much nicer texture than some of the others that I've tried. Even though the low FODMAP portion is a little on the low side for what I would normally eat, it's really nice just to have, and you can bulk it up with other fresh fruit and vegetables, tin tomatoes, some tofu, and you can make a really decent meal. So I always make sure I've got this on hand. It's so good for quick and easy meals when you really just want to throw something together and eat quickly. Something that I was really excited by was the inclusion of soba noodles in the recent Monash app update. These are a mixture of wheat flour and buckwheat, and if you keep within the low FODMAP portions, these are actually fine now. So they're a nice alternative to the rice vermicelli noodles, which I also always keep on hand. And I particularly like these Mama brand ones, which are a whole grain rice vermicelli. I think they just keep a little bit more texture, a little bit more shape and a little bit more bite than the regular glass rice noodles. So I always tend to have these in hand. And I'm really looking forward to having these. I haven't had these for quite a while. Something else that's new to me, but I'm going to definitely make sure that I'm going to keep it in hand from now on, is the cornmeal, or as most people know it as polenta. I've really developed a taste for this. I'm still getting to grips with cooking it, but it's a really nice alternative to either pasta, rice or potatoes. This was the NACO. This was actually in the international food aisle, and I think that for this one, which is labelled as fine cornmeal, actually is much cheaper than purchasing the own brand version of polenta. So that's a little tip for you, and this is quite a big bag, so that's probably going to last me quite a long time. Something I always make sure I've got in. Now I know this is a love-hate relationship for a lot of people, but I always make sure I've got microwavable rice in stock. I eat this several times a week. You can guarantee that as long as I know I've got this in the cupboard, I'll be able to make a meal. It's just so quick and easy to throw into salads for your lunch. I often make rice-based evening meals, so I just know that as long as I've got this handy, I can make myself a really satisfying meal. It is white rice. I do tend to find that I can digest white rice much easier than whole grain rice, so I tend to stick to this. And I do know that it works out more expensive buying it in these packs, but I do spend a lot of time in the kitchen cooking anyway. So for me, this is virtually my version of a ready meal. Just knowing that I've got something like this that's quick and easy, and I can literally have a meal on the table in less than 10 minutes as long as I've got something like this to hand. So another new favourite is taco shells. I'd never actually had tacos until I turned low FODMAP. I used to always much prefer fajitas and tortillas, and I would much rather have something like that. But I found these to be really useful. Not only are they tasty, but they make a really nice alternative to having a wrap, to having a pita bread, to having a chapati or a naan bread with a curry. Just gives me a little bit of a different element and obviously makes the meal a little bit more filling. So I really like these now, and these ones are the pure corn flour, so you do need to be aware of that. I think some of them do have wheat in, but these are the pure corn flour ones, and you get 12 of these in a pack, so they're quite nice. They can last quite a long time. Moving on to kind of bread products and bread alternatives. I really like these. This is the Shah brand, and this actually is on the Monash Low FODMAP app. It's one of the few products here in the UK that are actually registered on the Low FODMAP app. So the Shah brand is something to look out for. I can't say 100% if they're definitely all vegan, because I know quite a few gluten-free breads and things are not. I know the ones I buy are vegan, but please just double check that for yourself, because obviously the Monash food app is not vegan, it's just low FODMAP. These have definitely been a bit of a little lifesaver for me. They are quite expensive for what they are. I think this box, I think it's about £3 for 2 pizza bases. What I really like is that the bases come wrapped individually, so that you don't have to eat them both in a small time frame. So it's really nice to keep in for a treat, and you can eat one and then several months down the line, as long as they're still in date, you could have the other one, and it's perfectly fine because it's sealed separately. As a store-bought pizza base goes, they're really quite nice. You wouldn't necessarily know that they were gluten-free. I actually prefer them to the ones I used to buy, which were the wheat ones by, I think, is it Napolina? The black and red box. I actually prefer these. They are more expensive, but I do prefer the texture that these give, and it's so nice to just be able to have pizza. If you're feeling a little bit deprived, it's so nice to be able to know that you can eat a pizza. You can't get these everywhere. I believe these were from Sainsbury's, but they're definitely worth tracking down if you can. Another item in the Shah range, I haven't actually tried these before, but these are the gluten-free baguettes. They're quite large, but again, as with the pizza bases, you can split them down the middle, and they are sealed individually, so you don't have to eat baguette day after day after day. You can split them up and eat them as and when, as long as they're obviously in date. I do normally buy the ciabatta rolls, which come in a pack about half the size of this. Again, they're the Shah brand, and you get 4 of those, and they're just the right size for a sandwich for lunch. So I tend to just use one of those, and I'll freeze the rest and just use them one at a time as and when I want them, because they seem to be the only thing I've tried so far that isn't packaged individually. I mean, these would be really nice to replace a garlic bread with some garlic flavoured oil and some fresh parsley on there. Just really eating as close as you can to the way that you normally eat, and not feeling like you're depriving yourself. So things like this I think are really nice to have on standby. 2 other things that I've started to eat a lot of since I stopped eating so much bread is the oat cakes and the rice cakes. Once upon a time, I couldn't even bear the idea of putting a rice cake in my mouth. I thought they were the most disgusting things in the world. And it's amazing what you will get used to in the absence of anything else. So in the absence of bread, when I don't have any of the gluten-free bread available, when I haven't been to the shops, these tend to last me quite a while, because I still wouldn't say I enjoyed them, but they're definitely something for a quick and easy snack that I can quite easily eat, and they don't offend me as much as they used to do. So these are just the lightly salted, so they're just the plain variety really, and I'll tend to have these more for a snack or to maybe bulk out a meal such as a salad, and I'll have these with a little bit of like a chickpea mash on them, and they're just a nice little snack to have on hand. Again, with the oatcakes, I do like oatcakes, I've always liked oatcakes. They are slightly smaller, so you do need a couple more of these compared to the amount of these that I would eat. And again, I'd probably eat them with the same thing as a snack. And I do quite like to dip oatcakes in a soup, or if I'm having like a Vegemite drink, and things like that, and it just makes it a little bit more substantial. As far as I'm aware, definitely for the oatcakes, you can buy gluten-free varieties which are double the price. They're not necessary on a low FODMAP diet unless you also have gluten or wheat sensitivities. Both of these are half the price of the specialist food items, so the free from oatcakes are double the price of these ones. So again, that's something that's dependent on yourself, but if you're just looking for low FODMAP, then the regular rice cakes and the regular oatcakes are fine. And finally in that category we've got porridge oats. Pretty much use these just for breakfast and also to bulk out smoothies. Obviously on the low FODMAP diet it's only recommended for around 2 portions of fruit a day, and they do recommend you to split those portions up. I have so far seemed to be fine with having 2 portions in a smoothie. Just to bulk that out, I do sometimes like to soak oats, and I'll soak them in like an almond milk, maybe with a few like little flavourings in there, and I'll add those into the smoothie just to give it a little bit of a protein boost, make you feel fuller, and just to give it a little bit more in the glass rather than the tiny amount of 2 fruits that were allowed. Moving on to nuts and seeds. I've always got a stock of various nuts and seeds in. So these are my almonds. I'm always using pumpkin seeds. I use these on everything. I sprinkle them on pasta, I sprinkle them on salads, on stir fries. I absolutely love pumpkin seeds, so I go through these quite quickly. And the same again with the sunflower seeds. Now I used to just use these either toasted, sprinkled on pasta, sprinkled into a salad just as a little bit of an extra protein boost, but I am really starting to fall in love with these little things. Once they've been soaked and blended, they do make a fantastic alternative to any cashew based sauce. So a lot of vegan recipes will include cashews as a base for a cheese sauce, as a base for a cream sauce, and these are a fantastic alternative to that, and these are obviously low FODMAP where the cashews are not. So I'm really starting to fall in love with sunflower seeds, and I'm going through these quite quickly. I always have walnuts on hand. They're not actually my favourite nut, so I do actually tend to prefer these either chopped up very finely in porridge on a morning just to give a little bit of an extra protein boost, or I will actually blend these up to make more of a pate with lentils or tinned mushrooms, and I think they make a really nice base flavour. I'm not a huge lover of the flavour of them on their own, but as I say, I do find that they add a nice little protein element to meals, and they're much cheaper than most of the nuts or seeds that I buy, so it's quite nice to have them in stock. Something else is milled linseed, also known as flaxseed, and I just tend to put between a teaspoon to a tablespoon of this on my cereal. Sometimes I'll sprinkle it on salads if I think I need a little bit of a boost, but usually this goes on my cereal on a morning. It's very bland flavour, I would say, so you don't even realise it's on there, but obviously you're really getting that fantastic omega-3 boost, and you're getting the extra fibre there, so it's just a nice little thing to add in without it having a very overpowering flavour or without it being too noticeable. Something I like to keep in is popcorn. So these are the natural popcorn kernels, and I do really enjoy a little bit of popcorn as a snack in the evening. I do make my own. I usually top it with nutritional yeast, smoked paprika, sometimes a little bit of garam masala or a tiny little sprinkle of curry powder, or sometimes just on its own with salt. But I just find it's a really nice, easy, low FODMAP snack. You don't need much of it to feel like you've had a little bit of a treat. And I much prefer to buy it like this and flavour it myself, so that not only can I flavour exactly as I want it, but I can also cook the quantity that I want. One thing that you probably have noticed as I've been going through is my obsession with glass bottles and jars. Very rarely does a glass bottle or jar make it into this house in the form of, say, the passata without it being washed and then reused as something else. I do love to hold on to my jars, and I just think they're fantastic, particularly on the low FODMAP diet, when oftentimes you can only use such a very small amount of something that the packages can be open for quite a long time. So keeping hold of any glass bottles or jars that you do buy and reusing them, I think, is a fantastic way not only to keep things fresh but also to cut down on your general waste. So you'll see lots of these glass bottles and jars as we go through. Something I did miss out in the grains was my quinoa, which again, hello passata bottle. This is something that I buy, and again I can use this anything from breakfast right through till tea. I do think it adds a fantastic protein element to any meal, and not only have I started to eat it as you would normally eat it, where it's been cooked within a liquid, but I've also started to experiment with baking it, and it becomes really toasted and crispy and takes on almost like a meat crumble effect. So I have made the Minimalist Baker, I think it was like a taco mincemeat replacement with this, where it's kind of double cooked. You do still cook it in liquid to begin with, and then you mix it with like a salsa with herbs and spices, and then you cook it again in the oven till it goes really crispy and takes on a completely different texture and flavour. And I've also seen popped quinoa, which I think will be a really nice addition to breakfast, but I haven't experimented with that yet, so that's something I'm going to get into. Moving on to my tinned and pantry goods. Tinned tomatoes are a vital ingredient. I use them in lots of things. I use them as the base for most of my sauces. I will pretty much go through 4 or 5 tins of these a week. I use them in everything, and as long as I know that I've got this and some of the microwave rice, I know I've pretty much got a meal on hand. I know a lot of people do have issue with nightshades, particularly with tomatoes. Thank the goddess that I am not one of them, because I would be really lost without being able to put tomatoes in my sauces, because pretty much most of the things I cook are from a tomato sauce base. Tinned chickpeas and tinned lentils. I know a lot of people are really dismissive of the teeny tiny quantities that were allowed on the low FODMAP diet. As a vegan low FODMAPper, I would say that it's essential. Whether you appreciate the size of the portion or not, it's essential that you get these in at least daily into your diet. If you're not eating tofu for breakfast, dinner and tea, then you really do need another form of protein in your meals. Even adding just the tiny quantity that is acceptable. I often add it to salads, I'll add it into a sandwich filling. It can help boost your protein levels for the day, and it really can help make the meal feel a little bit more filling. And obviously I follow all the recommendations with these in terms of the portion size, and also I make sure that these are really, really well rinsed and drained before I even consider using them. I do use the tinned varieties, not only for convenience, but I do find that I am able to tolerate them much better than cooking the dried varieties myself. I'm not quite sure if that's because I don't have a pressure cooker, so I do cook them on the stove top, but I've always found that I can handle tinned legumes much better than I can dried. So I know that in terms of cost effectiveness, in terms of waste, that these are not ideal, but in terms of vegan low FODMAP, then I pretty much think they're essential. The chickpeas I'll use in anything from curries to chilies. I'll use them as sandwich fillings. I really, really enjoy like a chickpea mash as a sandwich filling. I'll marinate them and put them in salads. I'll marinate them and roast them and top them onto soups. I'll top them onto chilies and things like that. The lentils I pretty much use as my go-to mince alternative, so I will use this in anything I would traditionally have used vegan mince in, so anything from a chili, bolognese, a pasta dish, anything like that I would normally have used like a TVP mince or a soya mince in, I will use these in place of. And again, obviously the quantities are very limited, but there is always a tin of these open and drained in my fridge, and I just pretty much add them into everything on a daily basis. Something else that I never ever thought I would eat until I went low FODMAP is tinned sliced mushrooms in water. Now, unlike regular fresh mushrooms, these are actually acceptable on the low FODMAP diet, and about half a can of these is the acceptable quantity. It would never ever have occurred to me to use tinned mushrooms before. I adore mushrooms. I used to put mushrooms in everything. Mushrooms is one of the things I really miss on my elimination phase. But these are a fantastic alternative, just to give you that little bit of texture, that little bit of mouthfeel, that little bit of something that might be missing. And again, I always really thoroughly rinse them and drain them, and I think that these taste much better if you actually chop them much more finely than they come in the tin. They are sliced in here, but sometimes the slices can be quite big and they can be a little bit, the texture can be a little bit off-putting, even to somebody that likes mushrooms. So I tend to chop these quite finely. The allowed portion for these, plus the allowed portion of, say, the green lentils, you've then got the basis of a really decent bolognese with the two combined. These seem to work much better if you rinse them, drain them, pat them off to dry a little bit, and then fry them in like a garlic flavoured oil before you add them into anything. They're not great just boiled into something. They do need that little bit of browning off in a frying pan first. But as I say, they're really nice added into a bolognese, into a pasta dish, into a pasta sauce. They're really nice with tofu. And again, it's just something that's a little bit extra above and beyond the range of textures and things that you might be kind of getting a little bit fed up with, particularly towards the end of your elimination phase. So they're a really nice little alternative. Peanut butter goes in everything, really? No. So this is usually in my porridge on the morning. It's sometimes in smoothies if I do a chocolate mocha smoothie. And for myself, my husband can't stand peanut butter. So when I'm cooking just for myself, this will often go, it can go in a stew, it can go in a Thai style curry, it can go in a noodle soup or a noodle dish. I just think a little bit of this, not only is it boosting the protein levels, but it just adds a really nice, creamy, slightly salty flavour to what you're making. And as I say, hubby hates this, so this only goes in when I'm making food for myself, but I do like to sneak it into things. And if I've not had it on the morning for breakfast, then you can definitely guarantee that it's going to go in with my noodles at lunchtime or in a smoothie later on. So I've always got that in. I do prefer the smooth version, but obviously the smooth or the crunchy are both low FODMAP, and I do usually try to get the one that's without added salt or sugar. This was the only one that I had available to me at the moment, so this one has got salt in it, but I generally do buy the unsalted and the unsweetened version. Something else I use is sun-dried tomatoes. Again, you can only have a really tiny amount of this, but you only need a really tiny amount of this to really give a brilliant flavour boost to whatever you're cooking. So I tend to use one up to a maximum of two. I think a maximum of two is the upper FODMAP limit. Quite often you can get away with just using one and chopping it really finely, blending it into a sauce, blending it into a dressing. I sometimes even just snip it really finely over a salad. And they will last quite a long time in the fridge once they're open, and it just adds a little punch of flavour. And it's definitely something, if you can tolerate tomatoes, it's definitely something that I recommend. And I even, once I'm getting further down the jar, I even use the oil, because this is just pure vegetable oil, but obviously it's highly flavoured with the flavour of the tomato, so it's in essence it's a tomato flavoured oil. So I will often use this to replace a basic olive oil in whatever I'm cooking. Speaking of olive oil, we've always got that on the go, and I will use this either as it is, or I will cook my husband's onion and garlic separately first, remove them from the pan, and then I'll use the oil to cook the remainder of the meal, and that way I'm getting a little bit of the flavour without any of the FODMAPs. Raw cider vinegar with the mother. This is virtually gone. I think there's literally only the mother left in the bottom of there. I always make sure to get the one with the mother, which is the kind of cloudy, nasty, scoby looking bit in the bottom. But again, just a tiny splash of this with the chickpeas in a chickpea mash, in a tofu scramble, in a homemade mayonnaise makes all the difference. So that's definitely worth having in. I'm not quite sure, it must be something to do with the process of it, because obviously apples are high FODMAP, but apple cider vinegar is low FODMAP. Again, it just gives that really nice sharpness to a lot of things, particularly if you're using an eggy or a cheesy style sauce. I find that really invaluable for that. Passata is again something, along with the tinned tomatoes, that we tend to use definitely on a weekly basis. For some reason my husband went with this one, which has got the herbs in. Normally we just buy the plain cartons, which I think are completely acceptable. I just add some of my own dried herbs in. He decided to go posh this week, I'm not quite sure why. But again, this for homemade pizza, homemade pasta sauces, to speed up cooking a chilli or a bolognese, anything like that. I just think this is invaluable. And this is purely just sieved tomatoes, herbs, salt, and a little bit of an acid preservative in there. I think you can even just get them that are purely just sieved tomatoes and nothing else. So, and obviously we'll be making good use of that glass jar once that's empty. A couple of little sweet treats that I do like to keep in now are the tinned mandarins and the pineapple chunks. Both of these are low FODMAP as fresh, but depending on the time of year, I really don't think you can go wrong with these. I do prefer the ones in juice. So we've got the chunks and the mandarin segments in juice. These mandarin segments are the Aldi version, and they are some of the nicest mandarins I've ever had in my life. They are really good, and I'm really fussy about any skin or pith left, and these are perfect. These are just absolutely delicious. So they're really nice, low FODMAP, low calorie kind of treat to have after an evening meal. If you've had an evening meal that wasn't particularly filling, you could even add these into your cereal, on top of your porridge on a morning. The same for the pineapple. I do sometimes quite like pineapple in curried savoury dishes, but never on pizza. So again, these are really nice just to have as either a little snack, low calorie, low FODMAP, or to maybe even add in to a savoury meal or to a warm meal like porridge. But they're really nice to have on hand, and you don't have to go to all the trouble of chopping and peeling, and they're literally just grab and go. Good old maple syrup is my sweetener of choice, and this usually goes into porridge, a little bit into smoothies sometimes depending on the fruit that I've used, or I also sometimes use this if I'm marinating tofu to give like a bacon flavour. I'll put this in with the liquid smoke and the soy sauce, and it just lifts it and gives a little bit of sweetness. Sometimes to marinades or dressings, it's really nice combined with an unsweetened peanut butter or an unsweetened tahini and whisked in to make a dressing. It's, you know, it's really nice. This is grade A pure maple syrup. Please make sure you get the grade A pure maple syrup so there are no hidden nasties, fructose, anything like that in there. Make sure that you're getting the true maple syrup and not just the syrup that's full of crap. Milk, I'm not particularly fussy with milk. I think I went with Almond Breeze this time because it happened to be on sale. I'm not a lover of soya milk. My favourite milk is oat milk. The jury's still out on oat milk. Monash say no, King's College London say yes. I would like to go with King's College London, but I do tend to go with Monash for everything else, so I do feel obliged to go with Monash for the oat milk as well. It's pretty inconclusive. I really haven't decided whether I can tolerate or whether I can't. Chocolate oat milk is my favourite, but in the absence of that, I usually buy either almond milk, coconut milk, oat milk, if that's all I can find, and I'll usually pretty much go with whichever one is on offer. I don't use it in drinks. The only drinks I'll use this in is a smoothie, so I don't need it not to split or all those other things that people get really fussy about their milk with. So I will pretty much just buy whatever's on sale, but I do tend to go towards almond or coconut milk. Whatever milk I'm buying, I always buy the unsweetened version because I can use it in savoury dishes as well as in breakfasts. And cut. Thank you so much to have made it this far. I don't know what I was thinking the day I filmed this video, but it's turned into an absolute epic, so I'm going to cut the footage here. I will continue to edit and bring a second video. That one is going to be all my herbs, spices, flavourings, some basic kitchen equipment and some low FODMAP kitchen tips. I don't know about you, but I'm a complete voyeur when it comes to seeing inside people's kitchens, to taking a look at the ingredients they use on a weekly basis and hearing how they incorporate those ingredients into meals. So I really hope in that aspect you found this really interesting and really useful. I'm going to carry on editing the rest of that footage now, but as always, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and until next time, thanks so much for watching and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!